William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Afternoon and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink, or as I like to refer to her, if Erin wins her city council race, the first lady.
Lady? I like it.
Of District 9. Our guest today is Sam Smoot. She's the Interim Executive Director of Equality Texas. Sam, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning, Dave. Hi, Patti.
Hi.
Good morning.
And Lerone is here too. And
Hi.
Sam is the interim executive director. She stepped in like you screeched in just at the last minute, the way Patti normally does here at the studio.
Comrade.
Yes, I've been on since just before the holidays, just in the nick of time before the legislative session got started.
Now, you know, one thing that people were worried about, we have a new executive director, and the executive director does a lot of the lobbying and advocacy work. People were worried, do we have somebody who is experienced, who knows the lay of the land, who knows what she's doing, who's up on all the issues? You do. Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure, Dave, thanks. Well, in Texas, I was the director for 6.5 years of the Texas Freedom Network, which works on LGBTQ issues. And back in my day, which was some time ago, we were a strong partner with Equality Texas in advocating for passage of the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Act. I've also done some national political work and worked on a bunch of campaigns. I served as the political director both for the Human Rights Campaign and for Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And I got my start, actually, almost 30 years ago here in Austin, working for the Texas affiliate of Neighbor Out Pro-Choice America.
So lots of conservative organizations that you've been with. She was
right.
also a Fox News commentator. No.
So you're very well qualified for this position.
Oh, more than.
Thank you. I hope so. You know, it's a big job because this legislative session, like every single legislative session since the Texas legislature figured out that there are LGBTQ people, once again, they're coming after us, and they're coming after our community, and so we have some big fights going on and ahead of us.
It seems like every session we do nothing but defense, and I know that there are positive bills introduced every legislative session. One of which is repeal 2106.
Yeah.
And they can't even do that. That was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of the United States in 2003. And they can't repeal an unconstitutional law in the state of Texas. What's your take on how severe these bills are that are coming out now that have been filed against our community?
Yeah. The reason they won't repeal the unconstitutional bills and even do some things that are not ideological in the least, such as cleaning up the family code to acknowledge our families and make it easier just to administer the state's business, is because that would require acknowledging the existence of LGBTQ Texans. And for too many legislators, conservative and we'll name it Republican legislators, just even acknowledging our existence is a bridge too far. So I wanted to make that comment. But in terms of what's coming at us now and how serious it is, that's a great question, because I think all of us went through such a time 2 years ago fighting the bathroom bill.
Yes.
And we have so many memories of that. And that was such a onslaught and assault and a direct and hateful attack on our community, and especially on transgender people. Mm-hmm. And this session has a different feeling to it and a different tone to it. But let me tell you, the threats are absolutely just as great. In fact, one of the bills that we're concerned about includes the bathroom bill provision within it, HB 1035 by Zedler. So, we're really fighting on two different fronts, and I hope we do get to talk about some of the proactive legislation, because there's some good stuff there as well. But job one is trying to kill these bad bills and these measures that would really inflict real harm on our community. And so we're fighting on two fronts. The main one, I would say, is these religious exemption bills.
Tell us what that actually is. Yeah. What is a religious exemption?
A religious exemption says that it's legal to discriminate against somebody based on their identity just because you have a religious belief that their identity is somehow not okay. So these religious exemption bills really, but some of them very explicitly privilege specific conservative Christian beliefs, and some of them just say, quote, a sincerely held religious belief. But these bills would, there are four of them, and they all have House and Senate companion bills. One of them kind of includes everything. That's the Zedler bill. One of them, particularly dangerous, I think, talks about healthcare professionals. And this bill says that healthcare professionals could refuse any care, anything that's not life-saving treatment could be refused to an LGBTQ person or their family. And it's just, it's an outrage. It's horrifying. Mm-hmm. Another one says that any profession licensed by the state of Texas, and there are hundreds, any profession, including healthcare professionals, could refuse service based on a, quote, sincerely held religious belief. And so what these bills do is they codify discrimination against our community. They say that it's okay to impose religious beliefs on someone else, which is distinctly not American and not a religious freedom value. And they would inflict real harm on our community and further this idea that I think the right wing has tried to create for a long time now, which is that somehow religious beliefs, specifically Christianity and equality for LGBTQ folks, are at odds with one another. And of course, we know that's not true because Christianity calls on people to love thy neighbor and treat others as they would be treated themselves.
So these religious exemptions go way beyond not wanting to bake a cake for someone.
Oh yeah, the cake it's not about the cake at all. It's about so much more than the cake. It's about the vaccinations. It's about the sonogram. It's about the
life and death.
Trip to the emergency room.
About the CPR.
Yeah.
The CPR. Mm-hmm. It's about needing counseling services and being turned away because you want counseling to discuss gender identity issues. It's about bringing a child in for treatment and the healthcare office seeing two moms or two dads and turning you away. So they're terrible. I can't overstate how terrible they are. And it's so important over the next 2 months that people who care about our community do what needs to happen, which is get on the phone and make the phone calls and write the letters and come to Lobby Day.
And this is a great time to bring this up. Advocacy Day is on Monday, March 18th. And what do you do if you've never lobbied your legislator before? Tell us a little bit about Lobby Day and what it's going to be.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is don't be afraid. You're in for one of the great experiences of your life, because you're not going to be alone. You're going to be with a group of folks, many of whom are also doing this for the first time. And you're going to have the experience of, first of all, learning how to go in and tell your story and get your message across, and learning about the key threats and what you want to talk about. And you're going to have the experience of really weighing in on your political system, which is just so empowering, and knowing that you made a difference. So the practicalities of Lobby Day are that we are gathering at the First United Methodist Church facility that's just a block away from the Texas Capitol.
Okay, let me just give the logistics on this a little bit for people from Dallas, someone from Dallas. The best place to park, if you're facing the Capitol on Congress Avenue, the Capitol parking lot for visitors is to the right, about 2 blocks. And there are several parking lots up and down. I can't think of the name of the street. Do you know what it is, Sam?
San Jacinto.
It's on San Jacinto. And then First United Methodist, facing the Capitol from Congress Avenue, is 2 blocks. You have to cross 2 streets. It's on that second street to the left. So you have like a 4-block walk if you count the Capitol grounds as 1 block. It's a nice
get your steps in.
It's a nice little walk. Get there early because parking is bad. Patti is going to miss it because she'll be late.
No, actually, I'm making a presentation to a City of Dallas committee that morning.
Oh, okay, so you won't be there.
On LGBT issues.
Good. That's best.
Patty, how many Lobby Days have you been to?
Oh, countless. And I want to tell you, Sam, I took my oldest sister with me to a Lobby Day when you were at the Human Rights Campaign, and we went to lobby in D.C., and we went to the Hill.
Yeah.
And my sister cried tears that evening because it was so empowering and powerful to her to go and speak to her representative, and she spoke on our issues, and
awesome.
She just said, I think every American has to experience this at some point, to go and speak to the person who is elected to represent you. You haven't been a full American and a full citizen until you've done it and feel it, because it's empowering.
And you know how it helps, even if you live in Julie's district, or Jessica Gonzalez, who's an Oak Cliff rep, or Julie Johnson, who's in Northwest Dallas, or Raphael Anchia, or Eric Johnson. If you live in any of these districts, you think, oh, I agree with them. They count number of visitors, and they count people on an issue. So that if you're coming in saying, I'm in favor of Eric Johnson's new omnibus equality bill, they're counting that, so that when somebody comes back at them and says, why did you vote for such and such? Because I had 50 people come into my office and talk to me about it, about how they support that. So it's okay to go to the offices where they agree, where you agree with them, but it's also okay to go to the offices where you don't agree. And they're going to treat you very respectfully. The only time I've ever seen somebody not was Molly White, and she was voted out. We walked into her office on a Lobby Day. I think it was 2 or 3 sessions ago, and she walked out of her office and said, don't waste the time of the people in my office. We don't agree with you. You don't agree with us. Now get out.
Wow.
She was not reelected. I don't know why. She had such good people skills. She didn't know a reporter was along with them. So, but anyway, it's a lot of fun to do. And at First United Methodist Church, the Equality Texas people will give you a how-to. Now, if you don't believe in something, feel free to disagree or give your own opinion of it or your own story that might vary from it. That's okay. just get down there. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to
Yeah.
do. So what time are you meeting at First United Methodist?
We're gathering at 9 a.m., which makes for an awfully early morning if you head out from Dallas that morning. But even if you show up a little bit later, 10 or 10:30, our trainings are going to be done on a rolling basis. We'll have at least a couple of them. We are going to teach you how to do it, and we're not going to overwhelm you with a lot of training or a lot of information, just what you need to feel good and confident about going across the street to the Capitol. We will feed you some coffee and some donuts, and then we'll feed you lunch. And at noon, we move over to the south steps of the Capitol for a short rally. And then we spend the afternoon walking the halls and visiting the offices of our representatives. So it really is a great day. It's a long day, but it just feels so great to know you've made your voice heard.
And I think one thing that people, I've done a lot of lobby days over the years, and I think many people may, if they're feeling nervous, just remember that these folks are people. Our elected officials are people. They're just like you and me. They're not better than us. They're not.
And your wife is too?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Especially.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
She's absolutely
I
a
wasn't
person.
sure.
But they're just really people, and if just remember having a conversation with another human being, and if you're talking to a staffer because the elected official is elsewhere at the moment when you walk in, they're people too, and having a conversation and making eye contact and telling your story, and talking to another human being about what's real in your life is just amazing, and it doesn't take any special skill. It just takes you being a human being, the same as
I have a great example of that. The year that the bullying bill passed, Youth First went down. They took a bus down, and I followed a group of them. And one of them I knew had been beaten up in the bathroom at Plano High. So we went into Florence Shapiro's office. He told that story. As we're walking in, I said, okay, Elliot, I need you to tell this story and be as dramatic as you can about it. He told the story. She was in tears, and she ended up voting for the bill.
Wow.
And she didn't start out being in favor of anything LGBT.
Yeah.
So
that's a powerful story. And David, it's such an important point. We know there are offices that we're going to visit that we are maybe unlikely to sway a vote. But the fact of the matter is the only two things that have changed outcomes for our community are, number one, people's stories, individual stories, and people in positions of power getting to know individuals in our community and going on their journey and coming over to recognize humanity and ultimately stand with us. So this is one of the only two things that is going to get us to full and lived equality. The second thing, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this later in the show, is building our political power and our political muscle. But showing up and having these conversations really makes a difference. So please come out. Please come out. It's a week from Monday.
And Sam, stay with us. We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. And we'll be back with more with Sam Smoot from Equality, Texas right after this.
Hey guys, I'm C.D. Curvin, and you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis. Our guest is from Austin. She is the interim executive director of Equality Texas. Her name is Sam Smoot. She just started this year, and we are real lucky to have her fighting for equality for us.
Sam, I can't even imagine a more qualified person. You just hit the ground running. You've done this from so many angles, from so many directions, from so many different constituencies, and yet we're all the same constituency, really.
We are.
Yeah. Sam, you mentioned early in the show clean up the family code. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that a little more and why that's important to the LGBT community and our parents. Because I know some people think that because marriage equality is now legal, that okay, it's not that big a deal to go for a same-sex couple to go and adopt. No, there are still hurdles that we have to get over. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. There are hurdles in adoption.
Mm-hmm.
There are hurdles really with any kind of legal involvement that a family might go through, and that includes marriage, divorce, custody, you name it. And so issues that are all throughout the family code simply do not acknowledge same-sex relationships and families whatsoever. And so what that means is that our judicial system in Texas doesn't have uniform guidelines. And that puts LGBTQ folks in a terrible position because it all depends on which judge you draw, whether or not they're going to be sensitive to the needs of our community and our families. There's another bill that would simplify and standardize the process for changing the gender marker for trans folks. Once again, if you're transgender and you go in to change your gender marker, you better know which judge you need to get in front of, or you could have a really hard time. So this is just unacceptable that LGBTQ people can't have uniform standards in the state's legal system that even acknowledge our relationships and our families and our needs.
And one thing I have to say is here in Dallas we're very lucky because any of the judges in the family courts will do gender marker changes, name changes, they'll do all those things. You don't have to worry about what court you're going to get into. It's going to be treated fairly, and we're not worried about what somebody else's church thinks about what you're doing in your personal life.
And typically for adoptions too.
And for adoptions as well, yes.
That's because we're blue.
Well, that's good for Dallas, but I bet that's not true for everywhere in your listening area.
No, it's not.
No,
It's not. But you can travel to the other county to do it. You don't have to file in your own county.
But it's
lucky.
Right.
It's unfortunate that we still have to judge shop though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. We shouldn't
Sure
have to
is.
do that at all.
I wanted to go back and talk about this license to discriminate bills because I don't want to call them religious liberty. They're not. They're targeted. There's one bill that explicitly says about lifting the ordinances and taking away local control that targets us. Like
Right.
there's only two sincerely held religious beliefs that this law applies to, and it's hating us. And so I call them license to discriminate bills.
Yeah.
But what absolutely baffles me is this idea that you could have a religious belief that pick anything, A, B, or C, and you hang your shingle out to serve the public. You have a store, you have a service, you're a professional, maybe you're a doctor, maybe you make cakes, maybe you do something else, you're a carpenter or a plumber, and you put your shingle out. Do you interview the people you're serving before you make a decision whether to serve? And if you didn't like black people, can you still say, I have a religious belief against black people? No, you put your shingle out and you just suck it up. Suck it up, Buttercup. You've got the whole public, whether you like them or not, seeking your services, and you serve them. And why it's okay to now say, well, maybe not everybody, maybe those people. It just crawls all over me. And what I think is so important is to remember that these people need to put a sign out. If this goes forward, we've seen this happen in Oklahoma. They introduced a bill like this in their last session, and a woman, a Democrat from Oklahoma City, put up
Emily Virgin.
Yes, put up an amendment that said, okay, then you got to put a sign out so people can know. People have a right to know before they're denied service. They don't even go in your store. And that killed the bill.
In 3 hours.
Yeah.
Now, I have to explain something to you, Sam. Patty has this ridiculous idea that when you pass a law, it should apply to everybody. So I just want you to know you're talking to this radical extremist here. So
Well, she seems to also think that the that laws should be constitutional, but a friend of mine pointed out last week that a bill being unconstitutional has never stopped the Texas legislature in the past.
Oh, no kidding. And thank God they only meet every other year.
The ordinance, our non-discrimination ordinance that's in our, it's not even an ordinance anymore, it's part of our city charter.
Yeah.
And I was telling you before the show, we passed our city charter amendment by 75%.
77.
Oh, 77%. It passed in every precinct in the city except for 3, Dallas Baptist University, Christ for the Nations Institute, and a trailer park just outside of Balch Springs. Literally. It included more than just LGBT, but it included, for instance, veterans. So what this
and genetic characteristics and lots of things.
It included a number of things. I think pregnancy is included. So this religious freedom bill, what it does is it's saying, well, no, you can't legislate that. People have a right to discriminate against veterans.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's one bill that we do need to talk about that is potentially taking aim at non-discrimination ordinances. And we've talked about these license to discriminate religious exemption bills, and there are many of them. But there's another bill, and in fact, this bill is going to move in the Texas Senate probably Monday or Tuesday of this week. And a coalition of business interests has put together a bill that's called the Asset Coalition. They put together a bill called a preemption bill, and it preempts the rights of municipalities to regulate certain things. And the real target of this bill has always been known to be the paid sick leave ordinances that have been passed in Austin and San Antonio. However, and so the businesses that got together and wrote the bill did not want to risk the ire of our community and our allies, and so they initially put in language that explicitly carves out non-discrimination ordinances and makes it very clear that the preemption bill is not targeting our NDOs, leaves them alone. But this bill came up for a committee hearing week before last in Austin, and lo and behold, the substitute that was presented did not include the carve-out language. So we are tremendously concerned that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, I think his fingerprints are all over this, and the bill is going to be voted out of the Senate this week. And so once again, we're likely to, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see about the floor debate, et cetera. But most likely we're going to be relying on the Texas House to keep those protections for NDOs. And, you know, these NDOs, they protect about 20% of Texans. You all know better than I do that our community fought hard for these NDOs.
Yes.
And we need them. In the absence of any national or state protections, we need our local NDOs. So these are at risk right now, and that's another reason to come to Lobby Day.
So, Patti mentioned the state of Oklahoma and the success of killing that bill, but I think Mississippi has passed. They were successful in passing their religious exemption law. What is it like in the other states?
Well, I'm really glad that you asked, because this religious exemption, license to discriminate, this is not just the main battle in Texas. This is really sweeping across other states. So they're fighting this right now in Tennessee, in Florida, and a number of other states. And it's because I think that the far right believes that this is their most promising wedge issue, and that voters and constituents have been turned off by these more overt attacks on transgender people in particular. But the religious exemption bills, they think they can muddy the water a little bit, talk about religion, talk about freedom of religion, and they've even got a hashtag going here in Texas, hashtag ban the Bible, they're making the argument that basic equal rights and non-discrimination against LGBTQ people somehow constricts Christians' religious freedom, which is just nuts, of course.
Well, there's
It's
that.
insane.
Well,
It's
there's that
insane.
hate. There's that hate your neighbor thing in the Bible, isn't that what it says? Or am I misquoting it somehow?
I wish we could do, like a small d democratic, my sincerely held democratic beliefs that we serve all. When we have a public business, we serve all.
Do you know
We don't
why I
discriminate.
think the religious freedom bills are going forward and are so popular? Because it sets them up as the victim. Poor me, I'm being discriminated against. I have to serve a transgender person. A gay person came in and asked me to counsel them.
So put upon.
Yeah. And what's so silly about these things is if you're a counselor and you're being asked to counsel somebody who's transgender, it's not your specialty. How hard is it to figure out who the counselors are in this city who do specialize in it and say, I don't know anything about it really. Let me give you a referral to somebody who's really good. How hard is it when you're a counselor to help somebody and help them the right way? You can't know everything.
Well, David, you seem to think that this bill is actually a public policy solution to a real problem.
Well, you're right. You're right, but I do think that they're using this, and they like it, and it's gaining traction among the right wing because they're the victim now. I do want to mention we need to take a break in a few minutes. It is Advocacy Day, and we're calling it Advocacy Day because advocating is better than lobbying.
I think advocating is a little more holistic and also maybe a little less intimidating than lobbying because we're out here, we're coming to Austin to advocate for our rights and to talk to people about the very real needs of our community. So we're not just lobbying for and against particular pieces of legislation, we're advocating for fairness.
And it's on March 18th, which is a week from Monday. The legislative parking is about 2 blocks east of the Capitol, and the First Methodist Church. And by the way, does it still say First Methodist Church there? Because no, I'm serious.
Well,
all the Methodist churches in Dallas have blacked out United Methodist. It just says North Haven Church, Grace Church.
This church is kind of traditional architecture with gigantic columns in front of it, and they have wrapped their columns with enormous rainbow flags. Mm-hmm. And they also have a sign in front of the Family Life Center, which is where we gather. We're not actually in the church itself. The sign says, "We dissent." This congregation dissents against the church's decision. So this is a welcoming and affirming congregation and a safe space. But as a Methodist myself, it's a heartbreaking time for sure.
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, just real briefly, the General Conference of the United Methodist Church not only voted to keep in the wording that was in their Book of Discipline that said that homosexuality is incompatible with biblical teachings, they've increased the penalties for pastors who allow same-sex marriages or ordain pastors in their church. And what everybody in the United States, not everybody, about 65 to 75% of the churches, Methodist churches in the United States wanted was the one church plan, which would have said, if North Haven wants to do marriages, they can, and if Highland Park United Methodist doesn't want to do, and somebody from Highland Park can't come and file charges against somebody from Oak Lawn United Methodist Church because they decided they're going to serve their own congregation. And people are just heartbroken over this. But it's interesting, all of the Methodist churches in Dallas just about have blacked out United Methodist and have...
they've rainbowed it out.
They've rainbowed it out, you're right. And in Fort Worth, none of them.
Wow.
That I know
Oh,
of.
that's-
That I know of. And I was just looking online, searching online for the Fort Worth churches. But Fort Worth is where the Episcopal Church's split began. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
David, I want to make a quick point about what's happening within the Methodist Church. I think most folks probably are aware that the growth of that church, as with many, is really in the global South. And what we're seeing now, and particularly in Africa, and what we're seeing now is the fruit of the far right in the United States exporting homophobia to Africa for decades now. And now it's coming back to roost.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And also Russia.
Yeah.
A number of Methodist churches that have been planted in Russia. Anyway, we need to take a break. It's really heartbreaking what's been going on. And my whole point in that was meeting at First United Methodist Church in Austin. I wanted people to know, in case your sign was rainbowed out.
Mm-hmm. It's I don't know if the sign is very, very high off the ground and carved into the building. So I don't know if they've rainbowed it out, but you can't drive by that church without knowing where they stand, because there are giant rainbow flags wrapped around their columns.
Yeah.
Then folks will be able to find it. Oh, there
Right.
it is.
It'll be real easy. It's easy to find anyway.
You can't miss it.
We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Sam Smoot, the interim executive director of Equality Texas, is our guest. She's sticking around. She'll be with us till the top of the hour. We'll be back with more right after this.
I'm Dallas City Councilman Adam Medrano, and you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM.
And this is Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Sam Smoot is the interim executive director of Equality Texas. Sam, any chance that you're going to become the non-interim director, or
No.
you're a short-termer?
Thanks, Dave. No, I really came on intending to be interim and serve the organization and the mission during the legislative session to give the board the opportunity to conduct a thoughtful and hopefully far-reaching search for the next long-term leader of Equality Texas. And I do have a little update, which is that we've named a search committee. Our board meets next weekend in Austin, the day before Lobby Day. And I think soon after that, we will have a public announcement about the search committee and a job posting. And, you know, I really encourage folks to think about visionary movement leaders who could be great to take the helm of this organization for the next decade. We have so much work to do in Texas, and such an amazing community to be part of and support, and so please help us make sure we've got a great pool, a diverse pool, and a strong pool of candidates for this position.
One of the things that makes your position easier than it's ever been before, in a way, is that you have the new LGBT caucus in the legislature. 3 of their members have been on our show. Tell us a little bit about the caucus.
Yeah. This is an extraordinary time to be working on LGBTQ equality at the state capitol. I still get goosebumps when I think about and talk about the new LGBTQ caucus, Dave, because it's extraordinary. I mean, for many years, a decade or so, there was Glenn Maxey toiling in the fields alone and
By himself.
by himself, and then Mary Gonzalez, then later joined by Celia Israel. But it just would have been unthinkable a decade ago, even 5 years ago, that the Texas legislature would include 5 openly LGBTQ members. And it's phenomenal. It creates a hub of energy and activity. We'll see how these floor debates go, but I suspect that the existence of the caucus, and not just the 5 LGBTQ members, by the way, they've got a bunch of ally members who are also members of the caucus. I think it makes it harder for people to say hateful, ignorant things on the floor of the Texas legislature. But I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah, you don't want to fool around with Julie. She's not going to stand for it.
I wouldn't fool around with Jessica Gonzalez either. She's a force as well.
That's true. That's true.
But Dallas, you did good by sending those two legislators. They're just powerhouses, and the difference they're going to make is incredible.
You know, I think it really does make a difference. I remember when Laura Miller was running for mayor, she became mayor, and one of her top priorities at the time, and this was in 2002, was to pass a non-discrimination ordinance that protected us in the LGBT community here in the city of Dallas. And in doing that, of course, you need 8 votes at the Horseshoe in Dallas, because there were 15, counting the mayor. But, you know, it ultimately passed 13-2, but we were really thinking we would probably get 8. And at the time, Ed Oakley and John Loza were serving on the Dallas City Council, both out gay men, and several other people that we expected to be no votes. When it came time for the vote on the NDO, took the mic and said, "You've changed my mind. Because I know you and I respect you, you have changed my mind." And it was powerful, and it ended up passing 13-2 instead of 8-7. And that was extraordinary to me. I thought, wow, that's powerful. That really speaks to when you have a peer.
And our new council might be 1/3 LGBT.
Right.
Which is just amazing. We'll have as many people on a 15-member city council, or we could, as a 150-member legislature has.
That's true.
Same number. So I guess we need to start thinking about an LGBT caucus on the city council. I want to mention one more time Advocacy Day. It's March 18th. If you can get down to Austin for the day, it's a lot of fun, and you get to talk to your legislators. And here in Dallas County, we have some wonderful people who are legislators. Go down, meet them if you have the day off, or can take the day off. It can be a life-changing experience, really.
I think it's true too. And you know, Sam, my state senator is none other than Bob Hall, and they're not terribly good at listening, I would say. I've lobbied them in the past, and in district and in Austin. But I think it's important that we talk to those who are, you know, maybe they're even co-authoring or co-sponsoring a bill against us. And they're likely not to change their minds, but I think it's important that they know we're here, because what I can't stand, and maybe there are listeners out there who would join me in this, is they're not going to get out of this easy. They're not going to move forward with their hate agenda easy. We're going to put up a fight. And being in their face and talking to them truth, and we can do so professionally, but I think it's really important that they hear from us, because they can't get away with this. They really can't.
You're right. They need to see us. They need to hear stories of people's lives and the very real harm. Yeah, Bob Hall, his bill would allow counselors to discriminate. And so imagine if you are a person and you want to talk about gender identity, you want to talk about, you're coming to terms with your identity in any kind of sexual context, including heterosexual, by the way, because this bill, you could also discriminate against unmarried people or an unmarried woman if you thought that sex should only be within the context of a heterosexual marriage, for example.
Or divorce people.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's all kinds of unintended consequences with these bills. There's no question that the target is our community, but boy, religious minorities, divorced or unmarried people, you name it. It's actually, these bills would open a can of worms and just be disastrous.
So you can't discriminate against a married couple? I mean, I guess you could.
You could if they were of a faith other than your own, sure.
Well, it's my firmly held belief that people shouldn't be heterosexually married. Firmly held. Do you know what I want to talk about a little bit? We did well in Dallas County as far as getting allies elected and getting lesbians elected. Other places didn't do so well. Austin did okay with that too, but we got rid of four not so nice Republicans. One, he was
replacement.
One who's running for mayor here, Villalba. He was bumped out by a Tea Party person. I almost said something else, but and so that district flipped. How come Houston didn't do the same thing we did here in Dallas?
I think if you, well, first of all, I do want to say that some extraordinary things did happen in Harris County and some surrounding counties last election. You all may have read about the very young woman, immigrant woman who toppled the incumbent county judge, which nobody saw coming.
Yes.
You may have read about the fact that 19 African American women were elected to serve as judges. I think 2 of them were reelected, but still an extraordinary statement and achievement. When it comes to looking just at the state legislative seats, this gets to one of the big problems with our democracy, and it's certainly a big problem here in Texas, which is gerrymandering. And so I think in Houston, looking at the legislative districts, they are a little bit more than the ones in Dallas. They're a little bit more carved out to be not flippable, not marginal, seats that could elect either a Republican or a Democrat. Although in Harris County, a number of those Republicans, they won by smaller margins than they ever had before. So even the people who are in so-called safe seats are less safe. And there's a couple who are going to have tough re-election battles come 2020, I think. So I'm not sure exactly why Houston's lagging a bit behind Dallas, but I have to tell you, as somebody who's from Dallas, I'm so proud of the work that was done, and I know it's a consequence of 2 things. It's a consequence of voters saying we've had it with the hate. This is not what we've elected you to go to Austin for, number one, and number 2. All the hard work, all the block walking, all the donations, all the support for the good candidates. This really, and all the efforts to get friends and family to the polls. This makes such a difference, and this is how our community builds political power, by electing a Jessica Gonzalez or a Julie Johnson, by unseating a Matt Rinaldi, so that folks know that Matt Rinaldi is not in Austin this cycle, because he made it a priority to target our community, and voters said no. Exactly. That sends a message to all the other legislators that voters want fairness, they want equality, and that there's a price to be paid if you go after our community. And that's exactly where we need to be. We need to go after these people. We need to defeat them. We need to elect people who are going to prioritize standing with us.
And dealing with real issues like school finance, like property taxes, like expanding Medicaid, and all the things that really move Texas forward and not backward.
Yep.
And I just want to make it clear that you're on the radio in Dallas. We weren't really asking you to say something nice about Houston.
But I appreciate that you did.
Lerone grew up in Houston.
I grew up in Houston.
Oh, you did, Lerone?
Yes.
Okay.
And this show will be out there, and I guess people outside this area do listen to it. So yes, we're always gracious to Houston.
So I was just going to jump in, and I know we were going to try and talk for a few minutes about the good things that are being introduced this cycle. And you know, I said thank God they only meet every other year for 140 days. But because the Texas legislature is, infamous in its centuries now of crazy. But there are some really good things that are being introduced. I know, Celia, Israel has a bill to ban conversion, what's called conversion therapy,
and that's been picking up in other states across the country.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're right, Lerone. It has, and this practice is so harmful. It should not only be banned; it should be criminal. It's terrible, and it hurts children in particular. And so, this is House Bill 517. This bill should get some good traction this session. We talked about updating the family code, uniform process for changing the gender marker, and then there are a whole package of a whole bunch of bills that would offer non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ folks, some just in one area like employment, but several would be comprehensive. And these are really important bills because, as you know, Texas is one of those states that offers no protections whatsoever against discrimination. So we are looking forward to these bills picking up some steam this session.
I certainly hope so. And I reshared a thing on my Facebook page today where 2 years ago it was noted that Joseph Nicolosi, the modern father of the torture known as ex-gay therapy, has died. And a comment back to him has said, "Has he tried not being dead?" Which kind of sums it up.
Right.
Oh, man. That's a good one.
Now, what would these comprehensive bills actually do? Would there be penalties for discriminating if you can prove, or does that allow you to sue the organization that discriminated against you? What is the protection?
I think both, David. Essentially, these bills just add LGBTQ Texans to the prohibitions that already exist in Texas state law against discrimination. So they're just including us along with everybody else, which it's about time.
Yes.
And the ordinances that we have, the biggest thing it does is it says, we here in Dallas, unlike Houston, do not believe in discrimination against people in all of these categories. And really what we're saying is we don't believe in discrimination for anybody for any reason here. And I think people, in many cases, take that to heart. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's a fear of being sued, but it says something about who we are as a city. And that does more to stop the discrimination, I think, than anything.
Well, there's also there's a big business case to be made for embracing non-discrimination. Companies are more likely to relocate or host major events in cities or states that have non-discrimination protections because the general public, their employees, their customers, there's an overall understanding that non-discrimination means you're a good guy, means you're a fair person. And this is really a bedrock American value. And in fact, there's a poll that was released in January. It's going to be updated later this month. But 64% of Texans favor laws that protect LGBTQ people against discrimination. And here's the extraordinary thing, that the majority supports non-discrimination across every single demographic group, regionally broken down, racially broken down, and even by religion. And so a majority of white evangelical Christians support non-discrimination protections. It's basic fairness, and it's time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really disgusting about the state of Texas would say, 77% of Dallasites, we don't honor your community's beliefs in non-discrimination. Thank you, Sam, so much for being on.
Yeah, we're completely out of time. When the legislature is over, you'll come on and let us know how we did. I will see you down in Austin a week from Monday.
Can I just tell your listeners, you can register for Lobby Day at equalitytexas.org, and there will be a bus from Dallas. So
awesome.
You can ride the bus. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. We'll reiterate that next week.
And I will get that out online tomorrow. Our guest next
Thank
week
you all.
is
Thank you, Sam.
Avery Bellew from Lambda Legal, and we'll see you next week. Be best.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.